substantial and meaty and all that. So I think you'll enjoy being a little bit closer. As you may have read in the program, what's happening now is a live debate on a controversial issue, which will allow us to talk not necessarily just within the narrow parameters of the motion, but also to deal with the underlying serious human issues at stake, as Roma reminded us in the briefing a little bit earlier. Now, we have a format that will be rather familiar to those of you who are aware of the kind of old school Oxford debating television.
Live and recording.
So we've got a motion, we have team for, and we have a team against. I'll introduce us.
Okay na? Kasi si IMF debate lang siya.
Participation in the form of
Ayan,
votes.
Okay. Kita mo?
Which side of the motion that you would tend to agree with. If you look at your tables, you will see these little boxes with orange kind of springy things. Do you see them? Okay, lots of buttons on them, do not be confused. We have A, B, and C, which are the most interesting. Because A stands for I agree with the motion, B for I do not agree with the motion, and C for I am neutral on the motion. Okay. What we'll do is ask you to please gauge what you gauge. We'll gauge your views on it at the beginning of the debate before you heard from everyone. We'll then debate for about 45 minutes. Have 15 minutes for your participation, your views and questions. And then we'll ask you to vote again, in secret, via the determinators in front of you. Okay? Now, what's the motion? This House believes that national action plans are the only tool for translating UNSCR 1325 on women, peace and security. Once again, national action plans are the only tool for translating UNSCR 1325 on women, peace and security. The only tool. Okay, A, agree, B, against the motion, C, undecided. I would like you to, you have 1 minute in which to press the right button. And once you've pressed it, you can't change your mind. Okay? And the very fast computer program will gauge everything. Oh, excuse me, sorry. 30 seconds, what am I saying? 30 seconds. 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Okay. Okay, that's enough thinking now. Let's do it. Oh, wait a minute, I should have tried 30 seconds. Tick. No. 15. 10. 2. 1, and your time is up. That was very exciting. I like that. You have a fight. You have a fight ahead of you. Yeah. The 4 people. Okay. So let us move on with this debate, which we hope will be rather dynamic. We have high-level advocates who work on peace building, women, peace and security and equality across the region and globally. They are bringing their own experiences to the debate, the pros and cons of adopting different strategies to translate and implement the women, peace and security agenda on the ground. The participants will then be the decision makers of which side highlights the most relevant arguments, while also having the opportunity to engage with the discussants on this topic. That's you. All right. Let me introduce everyone, and then we'll ask our first speaker to begin. For the motion, we have Ambassador Anwarul K. Chowdhury. He's the former Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and member of the Asia-Pacific Advisory Group on Women, Peace and Security. He was formerly a president of the United Nations Security Council and indeed the prime mover behind 1325. He can bring that perspective, rather, the diplomatic top-level perspective, onto the work that we are discussing today. Next to him is Mossarat Kadim, Executive Director of Paiman should be described as Alumni Trust of Pakistan. Now, I've known Mossarat for some time, and she's just this amazing, brave person who can bring her perspective from the ground, literally face to face with people who are actively working against women's participation in Pakistan. And she can change their minds. She has shown it, so she can give that different perspective on the same issue. May I introduce our panel our team against the motion. They are Irene Santiago, Chair and Chief Executive of the Mindanao Commission on Women from the Philippines. You will remember, of course, from her awardee, being the awardee this morning. And also speaking will be Roma Bhattacharya. She's a Senior Gender Advisor and Team Leader of Policy and Planning. So she's come all the way from New York, actually, as has Ambassador Chowdhury, to be here to support what we're doing today. So we're very grateful for this incredible level of expertise and experience joining us on this panel. I think that we will get a lot of substance as we go through it. And hopefully, I was talking about heat and light was what we're going to try and do in this debate. The heat of passion, of argument, and the light of information, of knowledge, and we'll learn some things. I think the way that we'll do it is, I kind of don't want any hostilities, seeing as we're all about peace. So what we'll do is I will ask some rather tough questions as a way for people to defend their positions. With your permission, shall we begin? Ambassador Chowdhury, when you started to promote 1325 at the beginning, what made you get into it? Are there better things for the UNSCR to be involved in? You're into security. What's that got to do with women?
Thank you very much. Veronica, you kicked off the discussion very wonderfully. The setting is nice and the voting is in.
Well, let's actually, can we take that down so that people can kind of, there's not that subliminal message going on all the time. Is that possible?
As we were approaching the new millennium, and after the World Conference of Women in Beijing in 1995, it was felt very strongly that women's role and contribution in the area of peace and security needs to be recognized. And we knew that the Security Council of the United Nations is entrusted by the UN Charter to deal with the issues of global peace and security. And we thought that is why, following the lead in Beijing, we need to bring that agenda to the Security Council. We have been trying. There was no member state of the Security Council willing to stick out their neck to push this agenda in the Security Council. Why? Because they were aware that the permanent members of the Security Council, 5 of them, were not very supportive of that position. So, coincidentally, and I had been working with women's groups, civil society to support this agenda. And coincidentally, Bangladesh got, I was at that time ambassador of Bangladesh. Bangladesh got elected to the Security Council in January 2000. And in March 2000, an opportunity came for us to show some initiative in this regard. That was when Bangladesh became President of the Security Council. And I was representing Bangladesh, and I announced on the first day of March that on the International Women's Day on 8th of March, we will adopt a resolution recognizing women's contribution in the area of peace and security. Initially, the response of the permanent members was that this is what they call a soft issue, and we should not bring it up in the Security Council. It belongs to the Commission on the Status of Women. Then they were told, but we are dealing with peace and security, and women's role is very important, particularly as we have been seeing in various parts of the world. In a post-conflict situation, women have been bringing their different distinctive experiences, distinctive competencies, and distinctive experiences to show and perspectives to show that their contribution is necessary.
Can I ask you why you were willing to face up against the 5 permanent members?
This had been a position which is held by me for many years. I have been working, and I felt that genuinely there is a need to do that. And I felt, why not? Let me try my leadership opportunity in the Security Council to do it, while my colleagues, other colleagues, have been avoiding that for the last 5 years since Beijing. So this opportunity came, and civil society was strongly backing me up. But the 5 permanent members really opposed it tooth and nail. And at one point, finally, we had to give up our hope for a resolution, but I could get the member states to agree on a declaration.
Can I bring you back? Were you thinking about national action plans? Were you think when the UN Security Council comes up with such resolutions?
Much later. So we were thinking of first breaking the conceptual and political obstacle that we are facing. That they have to, Security Council has to accept the fact that women's role and contribution is absolutely essential. And that is why the declaration that we finally agreed in March 2000, it says peace is inextricably linked to equality between women and men. So that was the essential statement. And then we worked 8 more months to finally adopt 1325 on 31st of October 2000, same year. So that is the story that led to 1325, and even 1325 did not mention National Action Plan to begin with. It was subsequently taken up that for the implementation we need national level commitment.
And the national level commitment was taken up initially by who and how?
It came as every year we asked the Secretary General to submit a report about the implementation of 1325. And I think it is the second year when we started talking about National Action Plan. And then Security Council decided that all member states will be requested to prepare a National Action Plan. And that is when it started getting momentum. But as this morning Luke Stevens mentioned, only 43 out of 193 member states have completed their national plans.
Thanks very much for the time being. We'll hear from Ambassador Chowdhury again later on in the debate. But at this point, I'd like to turn to Roma. To ask you, Roma, from your Oh, sorry, is it Irene who's speaking? From the... You are with the UNDP, right? That's correct. What's that got to do with women's security and peace?
Well, I really love the story that Ambassador Chowdhury said because it's pioneering the landmark resolution. But this is 2013, so the understanding that we have of what constitutes peace and security is changing. And I would like to bring you good news from New York that on the 18th of October, we have a very new Women, Peace and Security resolution passed, which for the first time talks about the importance of addressing root causes. And the root causes, as we understand it, is to do with development deficits, inequalities, and exclusion. And by that I mean that if you really want peace, what do you need? You need to make sure that all parts of society have a voice in the decisions that are taken on behalf of all of society. You need to ensure that you don't just have economic growth, but you have inclusive economic growth, which means that there are peace dividends felt by all sections of a society. And gender equality or inequality is a fundamental structural inequality in society. Women are only one half of society. We're not a special group. We're not a particular object of policy making, but fundamental to societal goals. And what we need to do is understand, and this is what UNDP's global policy stands for, which is where I work, is that we want to support women at all stages of the peace process, but equally we want to see the peace table restructured. And by that, we mean supporting economics that delivers for both women and men, girls and boys, supporting rule of law, security sector reform that delivers for both women and men, girls and boys, and of course, most importantly, making sure that transitions are inclusive, that different voices can be heard and influence decision making. So that is why I'm speaking against the motion, not because I don't feel that the national action plans are not important. They are very important. They get the whole structure, the state, civil society to agree on priorities for implementation, terribly important. But we all know, those of us who've been working on this from Beijing, all our countries sign many agreements, they sign CEDA, they sign optional protocols, and nothing gets implemented. So unless and until there is a movement for change, unless and until all stakeholders are brought to the table to discuss what the priorities are, the national action plans may risk remaining on a piece of paper not being implemented. So it's not that, at least I don't say that I don't support the national action plans, but we're saying national action plans need to be supported with multiple strategies for change.
Would you go further and say it's not working anyway? Because I mean, if you're looking at that statistic that Luke gave us a bit earlier, that Ambassador was quoting, maybe they're relevant.
I actually don't agree with that. I think they're terribly important, the national action plans, exactly as the way quotas are important. Now, I'll tell you from a personal and professional
Quotas
example.
are important.
Yes, for women's political participation. Now, in one particular country, UNDP invested before elections in gender expertise in the national electoral machinery. But when the results, the actual elections happened, the number of women elected dropped because the vote was against the previous regime. What we need to understand is transforming society is not a straight line, not straight arrows. It's cyclical. So one doesn't causally relate to another, doesn't mean the first thing is bad. It doesn't mean capacitating the electoral machinery of a country to think through what does voter education What does electoral laws mean? What does inclusive governance mean from a gender perspective is not a bad thing, even if the number of women elected went down.
Do you want to give me an example of when it doesn't work, when National Action Plan hasn't worked and has just remained a piece of paper?
I think
Very nice piece of paper.
one thing we have to understand in this whole room, this is a very new and emerging area of work we are talking about. The world is used to people thinking about poverty reduction and development separately and security separately. We are not used to actually dialoguing between these two worlds. So the national action plans, I think it's too early in the game to say X doesn't work or it's not important. I think it's terribly important in organizing the state, the civil society, women around certain agreed priorities. But what I'm saying is it is necessary, not sufficient for implementation.
Thank you very much, Rona. I hope that I was not too controversial in my questions to you.
Pleasure to
Did you want to say something, Ambassador?
Yes, as a matter of fact, two things I wanted to point out. That it is the traditional security perspective that in 25 wanted to change. We wanted to emphasize more on human security dimension rather than military-oriented state security perception. And this is the perception that still dominates the thinking of the Security Council, because the permanent members are a big believer in the state-to-state security rather than human security. There may be countries which are militarily strong, but people of that country may feel very insecure otherwise. And that is the security that was brought in, because women's participation will change that perspective. They will think more in the broader interest of the society. In a society which is peaceful, where their children and grandchildren can grow up in an atmosphere which is more contributive to peaceful human relations.
Well, let's try to make the link with our next contribution. Monserrat, I'm going to ask you to speak, please. If you could mention your experience in Pakistan, northwestern Pakistan, and how these big kind of resolutions and national plans relate to what you do very much on the ground, face to face with people like the Taliban. She has an amazing anecdote about her own experience when she went in there to go and ask them to please leave her workers alone.
Thank you so much, Veronica. Well, actually, I saw that there were so many votes in favor of against the motion. I thought our task has become very difficult, and theirs is really, really easy. C1325. When we started our work in Pakistan, it was in 2007 when we started working with the youth from the northern part of Pakistan, which is called Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and the federally administered tribal area, the area which borders Afghanistan and was commonly known as FATA. We were very much working around 1325 because we included the mothers as well as youth in addressing the acts of violent extremism in their respective areas. It was only in 2010 when we were going, two other women along with me were invited to, of course, be a part of the celebrations of the 10th anniversary of 1325 in New York. And we were called for a meeting by the Foreign Office, and we were asked, you are not supposed to talk about 1325. The reason that we have no conflict. There is no conflict in Pakistan. So it was, for us, it was an eye-opener because we have been working around it for almost 2 years, and now all of a sudden we are being asked not to mention this word 1325. We were going for the celebrations of the anniversary of 1325. Anyway, when we went to New York, we were looking at each other what to talk about because we are not allowed to speak because of course it was in the national interest and it could not go against the national interest of Pakistan. So when I came back, I started using the word participation, prevention, protection and promotion of women at all levels of decision making, post-crisis, I call it crisis not conflict, decision, of course, reconstruction, rehabilitation and reintegration, which is in effect basically the 4 pillars of UNSCR 1325. So instead of using the word 1325, we started giving it the name 3 Ps: participation, prevention and protection. And it helped. We sensitized the parliamentarians on the same, but using 3 Ps, not 1325. We worked with the government officials, talking about the same: inclusion of women, inclusion of those who are being left out from the decision making and participation at all levels, and prevention of more youth becoming radicalized or affected by, of course, this wave of extremism. It helped. So it doesn't matter what you do and how you do it. I mean, because we use the other name for it. But it is helping. And we are still working with the same youth, with the same women. And the transformation has taken place. We have helped de-radicalize 400 youth. And of course, we have approached those extremist youth, I would just say, through the agency of mothers. So we have been engaging mothers. And why 1325 is important? Because for people like us, who are working at the grassroots level, it becomes very difficult to take up this issue to this level. So when you have a national plan of action, it means you have already identified, prioritized your problems, your agenda, and you have linked it, you have adapted it. So instead of making it like, calling it a generic policy framework, it is grounded in the realities, in the needs of your country, while you are still linked with the global agenda. So for me, I look at it from this perspective that yes, 1325 action plan is crucial and important for the countries who don't recognize a conflict but who have to work to address it. 1325 is the means to achieve that.
Thank you. No, that is working now. Thank you. Sarah, can you tell us about the story of this
Like I said, we work in the federally administered tribal area, and we work on a very. We used to work on health and education issue, particularly on the health issues of women and children in FATA. FATA, I would call, is the most volatile region of Pakistan. It is so difficult to talk about the women-related issues in that area, and we were working on health issues. So 2 of our mobilizers were abducted by one of the Taliban group in Khyber agency. When I learned about it, I was fortunately sitting in my office in Peshawar, and I said, we have to, of course, release these boys. Khyber agency, I went to actually Bara, which is around 30 kilometers from Peshawar, and I straight away went to the Hujra, which is called the men's quarter of the person who was the leader of that group in that area. So the man standing at the gate, when I was getting down from the vehicle, he told my driver, tell her not to get down. I got down, and I just told him, there was a big door and there was a small door inside that big door. I said, please open this door for me. And he was reluctant. reluctant. But fortunately, it's a Pathan's tradition that they can't actually say anything to a woman. They can't, argue with a woman. So, taking, of course, advantage of that, I opened that door. I just went inside the men's quarter where some 30-35 men, along with the leader, they were sitting. So when the man, the leader, when he saw a woman coming inside, and that too with an open, of course, face, not veil, he hid his face with the sort of a shawl that it's always there on their shoulder like this. And I said, brother, I'm here to actually ask for the release of two of my mobilizers who are working for your sister, your mother, your wife, and your daughter. And I use these four relations, not saying for the women of this area. So that was one of the, of course, the tactics that I used. Tactics not, but it was, of course, the reality. And secondly, I had to have an argument with him, and after 40 minutes of arguments, that too was embedded all within the context of the Quran. He, at the end of the dialogue and the argument, he agreed and he said, from now onwards, I'm talking of 2009, from now onwards, we are going to be helping you, protecting your team to work for the health of our women and children. And since 2009 till this day, 2013, we are working in that area. It's not that they are supporting us, but it is at least we are working without any fear in that area and mobilizing, motivating people to come forward and be in our group as peace practitioners and peace builders. And that too, of course, with women and through women.
Respect. I love that story. Sorry, I just had to get you to tell that story. Thank you very much. I mean, it just seems to me that anything that will give support, whether, I don't know, psychically or practically or politically, internationally, at all those levels, somehow it helps you to be able to, when you're in those kind of crunch situations, to progress this agenda, the 3 Ps, the women, peace and security, when you're out there in the front lines as well. I mean, to me, that's where the thing comes in. Can I turn to Irene? Ask you. I mean, it's all right in places like the Philippines, where you have a very strong civil society, and women are extremely active. I think we do very well. I happen to know this because I'm from the Philippines. We do very well with women's representation in business and in politics and things like that. I think comparatively, we do all right. Why do we need to go beyond the national plan? Need to go beyond the national plan of action? Doesn't it lead to confusion, lack of coordination? It's not that bad.
But that's precisely what we're trying to argue with. That it is the National Action Plan is an important tool, but not a sufficient one. I think we have to go back to what Ambassador Chowdhury said a while ago, that this whole initiative came from women. It came from the CSOs and the International Women's Movement. I think that's very important to bear in mind, because the work in the Security Council is, to me, just another foray into the public space. Because the women are comfortable in the private space, right? And so we've gone from different public spaces, different levels, and finally the Security Council. So to me, this is just part of the work for social change that will bring about gender equality. And for me, that is very important to discuss, because to me, the 3 barriers remain. Ambassador Chowdhury already discussed the conceptual barrier, that security is a hard issue, and therefore, because gender is a soft issue, it has nothing to do with gender, or nothing to do with women, which was my experience when I was in the peace negotiation panel of the government. If I was seen as a gender expert or just a gender person, I would have been totally marginalized because that's a soft issue. So we still have the conceptual buy-in into the concept of security as very much linked to women and to gender. That's one. The other barrier that we in the women's movement also point to is the technical barrier. Now, with national action plans, it seems to me that there is difficulty in transforming global policy into local, religious, economic, ethnic, whatever context where conflict is present. And so that's to me, is a technical barrier. And the third one, also Ambassador Chavez talked about this, is the political. And I said in my documentary, being political means you're taken seriously. If you're not taken seriously, forget it. It's not, nothing we do is going to matter if we are not taken seriously. So I want to put all this discussion about women, peace and security, the work of the Security Council, in the context of the women's movement bringing about social change. And we have lessons that we can learn from past successes, and one of them being, if you can name it, you can have it. You know, so it was, when we said women's rights are human rights, then bingo, you know, that went, the point fell. When we said personal is political, there again, that was it. So I think there is, these are the challenges to us, and it cannot all be encapsulated in a national action plan. And so that's the reason why I'm arguing here now against the national action plan as being the only tool for the implementation of 3025.
Good to take that up, Ambassador.
I think I agree with Irene's point of view, very convincing. One thing we need to remember, as all of you know, that in the United Nations system, only body whose resolutions, decisions are mandatory is the Security Council. General Assembly resolutions are what we call recommendatory. But so once the Security Council entrusts governments with the preparation of the National Action Plan, each of the government is obligated to do that, and each of the government will then be obligated to implement that. So that is a very important point. Even the United Nations Charter mentions that member states agree to comply with all the decisions of the Security Council. So that is very important. In addition, I would like to add that National Action Plan brings in 4 strong elements. Firstly, every National Action Plan so far has been approved at the highest decision-making level in the country, either by a parliament or by the cabinet of the government. Secondly, it involves all the various ministries of the government. It is not just prepared by the Women's Affairs Ministry or the Foreign Affairs Ministry, but it is participated as it is a joint effort of the government. All the ministries will participate. So that brings in the totality of the government's involvement. Thirdly, it involves, in the best cases, all of civil society partners. That is what we are insisting now, that in the preparation of the National Action Plan, the governments should involve civil society in the best possible way to get their points of view. And finally, each National Action Plan is available to the Security Council, to the Secretary General, and it can be monitored, both nationally, because this is a public document, and we can always hold the government responsible that this is what you have committed. And I believe even the minimum commitment is better than no commitment. So that is very important, that National Action Plan should be a public document available both nationally and globally to be monitored, to be implemented, and to be questioned. And also, I have added another dimension. I was asked that no, once the national plan is done, it is end of the game. But I say that each national action plan can have a built-in 2-year review process. Number of industrialized countries like Netherlands, Austria, UK, they have brought out their second national action plan. They believe that after a passage of years, it is necessary for us to review. So I now advocate among all the members that let us build in 2-year review process. That after every 2 years, the National Action Plan will be open for review.
So it's, in other words, it's not a document that's set in stone.
Yeah.
It should be flexible and responsive
Yes,
to the needs in the individual state.
And as we face newer challenges
Yes.
to women and peace and security agenda, we need to review it all the time.
Okay.
But just a quick answer aside. Of the 3 maps that have now been developed, only in 7 countries do they have dedicated budgets. Now, if the map becomes the only tool, I'm afraid this whole issue is going to take a long time. That's the reason why, while it is important for me, for the state to take responsibility, because that's what the social resolution says, that the responsibility for implementation is imposed on the state.
Through the national action plan.
That's important, but that's why I'm situating this whole thing within a context of social change. That not to put everything in a national action plan as the only tool that will bring about any kind of change.
I mean, yes, you're changing mindsets. It is absolutely about transformation. And the thing is that I think in this region there's a big issue about accountability. I mean, I think that's why you're getting these gaps between the laws that are not funded, or the lack of national action plans. I want to ask you, Roma, if you know about what attempts there have been for monitoring and evaluating the success of progressing the WPS agenda.
Before I go to that, I just wanted to quickly add to what my partner for this afternoon is on trying to actually provoke all of you sitting there after a wonderful
Yes,
lunch.
you've got 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, we're going to go to you.
Yes, and if I can provoke you all a little bit to think a little bit differently about what does indeed women's peace and security mean in the context. Think of your countries, your societies, and the challenges we are facing today. My provoking questions are, I have heard that Thailand is going to become a hub for clean energy. Now, anybody who's ever been an Asian woman knows there's a whole 2 C's. We talk about the 3 P's, but we never talk about the 2 C's. And the 2 C's are cooking and cleaning. Do you know what the cost is to GDP? Because women's labor is so caught up with the everyday unpaid care economy. Why are we in this room not dialoguing with the clean energy hub in Thailand? Because you know very well, women are cooking all the day. They have most of the impact of these fuel-intensive energies, unrenewable fuels. Why don't we engage with debates on infrastructure? Why don't women in crisis countries or whatever, as most brothers said, don't talk about 1325 in insecure environments, why aren't women part of the decision making on what kind of infrastructure gets rebuilt? What are the priorities? Do you want a school opened? We had our wonderful leader today, champion from Timor-Leste, talking about opening schools in rural areas. Do you think you're going to get out of the trap of violence and conflict and insecurity unless you achieve fundamental development goals so that people have some access to education, to health, to livelihoods, to energy, to infrastructure? Why do we want to restrict peace and security understandings to militarized understandings? If difference is not a problem, look at Switzerland. They have 4 languages, but they have high per capita income and decentralized decision making. So being different is not a problem. The beauty of the world is its diversity. Thank God I work for the United Nations where every day I eat, sleep, drink with people with different cultural backgrounds, different languages, different foods. We really need to think much more in terms of development. What is it that we are looking for? Inclusive growth.
Wait.
Voices.
What do we mean about that? That's exactly what I was going to pick you up on.
Yeah.
What do you mean by development? Because so often, especially in this region, and there's a lot of controversy about development in the Greater Mekong region, in particular about a big dam, who's profiting from it, who's being moved out in order to allow these development projects to happen. They are about profit. They are not about development, actually. So what do you mean by development?
I think you're absolutely right. So that is not my understanding of development. I started by talking about...
But I think this is part of what you were saying.
Yeah.
Like we need to develop our understanding of what we mean by development.
Exactly.
In
the
the
context of peace and security. So I started by talking about inequalities and exclusions. So there's a difference between a society which is so-called developing, where the benefits of the development is going to one group of the society, to the exclusion of others. Those are the societies that tend to be insecure, fragile, and break down. Equally, today, you see in many countries in the world, the youth, the women are protesting because they want voice. They want to have a stake in the future. And if you don't have societies where different groups have voice, are able to contribute to the decisions of how resources are going to get allocated, what are the priorities, those societies will not have long-term peace and stability. So the kind of dam model that you're giving, which is for me 1970s outdated thinking, where you build something,
It's happening right now.
to the exclusion of all else. But today the world has to realize that something has changed significantly, and that is communication. I'm speaking from my country in India. The poor now are connected. They have aspirations. They have far more information than they had before. So you can't warn them anymore.
Development in Pakistan, that's an issue.
No, but actually I just want to respond to what Roma has just said. I think in that situation, especially like we are talking about fragile states which are in crisis or in conflict, NAPs, National Action Plans, become very, very important. Because in that case, the state starts owning the issue. And they start actually, trying to reach out and give a sort of voice to the communities who are affected by the conflict or the crisis. So state ownership is very important, and that can only come if the state develops a national plan of action, a national action plans. In case of Pakistan, of course, like I said, it is so difficult to talk and speak about the issue itself. So unless and until the state doesn't own that issue, it doesn't actually try to reflect the problem at a grassroots level to the national action plan, they will keep silent about it, and the root causes that we are talking about will not be addressed. So in case of Pakistan, if we really want to make a national action plan, we have to come up with two priorities. I mean, this is just like I'm prescribing, I'm just trying to suggest. The first one will be education, and the second one will be economic empowerment of all across the board.
I don't think you disagree with that.
I have a problem with this state ownership of a national action plan. Especially if you remember.
It's literal extent ownership.
If you look at wars of recent memory, right? All the wars that you can think of. World War I and World War II, they're far, okay, gone. Oftentimes, because of our colonial history, the ending of a war is a negotiation between the state and ethnic and religious identity groups. That's the way wars usually supposed to end. You know, there's a ceasefire, there's a peace agreement, stop the war between the state and the identity groups. Now, if the state alone it's owned by the state, the National Action Plan is owned by the state. What is happening is that they are now, in fact, negotiating a new relationship between the state and the identity groups that fought with the state, right? And if you want to add another thing, which is what we're here for, and the other thing is that patriarchy. There, I say the P word. Patriarchy is embedded in all of the processes and structures and institutions that led to war. So that's why I said, you know, I will accept a national action plan, but I have to find out what kind of a state is this.
So national action plans are the only tool in an ideal society, which we do not have.
Yes.
Well, to that, I think, Irene, your comparison, because the example that you gave about the state and other parties making an agreement, the beauty of National Action Plan is that it is available internationally. It is prepared in response to an obligation presented through a resolution of the Security Council of the United Nations. So there lies the beauty that every country will say, I agree with the resolution of the Security Council and this is my national plan. So that is their commitment to the international community. They are publicly making that. And that is what Musarat is talking about, ownership. That my obligation to the international community has been made through my national action plan. The problem with this that why only 43 out of 193 countries have made, and half of these now 43 are industrialized countries. Many developing countries are avoiding their responsibility by not preparing national action plan. So my point is that we should insist on the countries to come up with a national action plan so that at least some global commitment is there. That is the only way to get the countries on board with the implementation of WPS agenda.
Just adding to that, see, when you don't have a national action plans, what happens? The state, they leave it to the civil society to take care of all the problems and the issues when it comes to conflict or crisis. So when you have an app, that means that the state owns those issues, those problems, and they are linking it up with the priorities and with the national interest. And like Jolly Sir just mentioned, it's your, you are obligated to do it. So as a responsible member of the UN Security Council, the UN, of course, you have to go about it. You have to do it. Secondly, when you have NAP, that means you as a civil society member are supposed to be, I'm talking of the high impact NAP. You have to be a part and parcel of the whole process of developing a national action plan. So your voice is being heard. And that makes a difference. And here I think the theory of change begins.
I was very interested to hear from Irene actually a little bit earlier about what happens during a ceasefire, because I would put it to you that, I mean, I'm thinking rather specifically at the moment of what's going on in Myanmar, in Kachin, because there are lots of different narratives about what's really going on in that peace process. Like there are some people who believe that it's about a big mega development project is the reason why the government wants to look like it's doing peace. But in actual fact, it's not just about that ethnic identity versus the centralizing project, but also about development and profit making and linking up to the rest of the world. So it's extremely complex. So yeah.
I have a very simple, I'm not a complicated person, and I think simple definitions, because it really helps us when we work on complicated things. Yes, not a complicated definition for something already complicated. To me, peace is the product of a process of increasing connectors and decreasing dividers so that development can occur. It's a product of a process increasing the connectors and decreasing the dividers so that development can occur.
So this complex words, development is imposed.
Yeah, and what is
If
development?
development comes first, if that is the priority.
No. But
Then what happens?
so development can occur when you decrease the dividers and development cannot occur. Then you have war. You have destructive conflict. That's what happened before. Okay. Now what then is development? Development, as UNDP has said, is expanding people's choices so we can live long, happy, creative lives. That's what development is all about. You want to be unhappy? That's not development. You need to, your short life, that's not development. So if we can marry
a
these
40-inch
two,
television with
if we can marry
DVD
these two, because sometimes the confusion is that development is peace, and peace is development. That's fine. But really, if you can make it clear that what you're doing is peace or not peace, development or not development, you have to make those distinctions. That if it divides, it's not a peace project. Okay? And if it does not then lead to development, it is not peace. So to me, those are the simple things that I have in my mind. So the things that you see, for example, in Burma, you see the things there, the greed, the whatever. What's happening? Connectors or dividers. They're dividing so that development cannot occur. Right? And so this is the question I always ask people I work with. I said, is that going to connect or is it not going to divide?
What if they have lots of women involved? What if they have lots of women involved? Does that make it any better? I'm teasing, I'm being a little
No, I'm not answering a question like that. I'm a journalist. so I know what questions I will answer and what questions I will not answer. And that's part of it.
I think also it is important for us to bear in mind that 1325 emphasized equality of participation of women at all decision-making levels. And I think that's a very key word. And I believe National Plan of Action is the assertion by a country of that principle, that they have to incorporate whatever their sort of stepping forward are. They have to, that is an international commitment by a country to provide an implementation of 1325 in their respective countries by providing women an opportunity for equal participation. So that is a very important point that we should remember, that we have failed so far to get any national action plan prepared according to an international obligation. Even after Beijing Platform for Action was adopted, not many countries came up with their own plans to implement Beijing. But this is an opportunity for all of us to get the countries to say at least whatever you want to do. This is your commitment. You tell us what you can do and what you intend to do. So that is the beauty, National Action Plan. But again, I should add strong civil society participation in the preparation and the implementation, and collaboration with the government is very necessary. Without civil society, national action plans will not be implemented at all.
I want to take this to the audience now, is that all right? I think I think we have some mics around for people if they want. Is that right? Can everyone see a mic somewhere near them? What I want to hear are your views. Maybe you have some responses to what you've heard, because I think that this has been a really useful and fruitful discussion, bringing out lots of provocative ideas. I hope I haven't provoked you too much. And I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. Can I have a show of hands of people who want to say something at this point? No keen show of hands. After that, Valentina. Please introduce yourselves and tell us what organisation you're with and all that.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ayu Gayatri. I come from the Indonesian Institute of Sciences in Jakarta, Indonesia. I'm very fortunate to attend this, and so I thank my host, Mother from NGP, and my colleague here also from Indonesia, Mr. Adhikam. And I also have my partner in working for Indonesian National Action Plan 1325, Mr. I would like to address the importance of the National Action Plans 1325 in my country. As perhaps you knew from worldwide, Ms. Jasmine also, we've been undergone the preparation of National Action Plan back in 2007 actually, and our ambassador in your, as I can quote, during the 6th anniversary of SCR 1325 in October 2006, the Indonesian delegation, His Excellency Mrs. Adiatwiji Abdulwas Asmaji, Ambassador and Deputy Permanent Representative mentioned, my delegation takes note of measures by various UN entities to implement the resolution at national and community level. However, it is essential that these endeavors should be taken in full consultation with national authorities. Hence, up to now, the Indonesian network of SCR 1325 do so. So we are having a national level discussion among stakeholders, intra-ministerial levels, with several members, organizations, of civil society organizations. So my position is that, and National Action Plan 1325 is not the only tool to apply on issues women, peace and security. At home we are facing, as you keenly explained, that we are having a vast amount of development problems, climate change issues, unemployment, unequal justice in education, how you mentioned it. However, our country also has undergone a long history of violent conflict, armed conflict from Aceh, Timor-Leste, and at the moment in Papua. No matter what, the discussion taking place at home, especially on the perspective of security, we are still debating on the traditional perspective of security. Talking about security is not the domain of women. Every time we try to approach a particular body of ministry, for instance, we are facing a wall, as if women have no right to talk about security. This is exactly the mindset we will try to change from the drafting of National Action Plan. However, as also progressing at the moment, we are not going to gain exclusivity in drafting this National Action Plan. We are trying to link it as much as possible with other sectors in the development agenda. Thus, in our concept, which is now taking stage on harmonizing with other existing bills in Indonesia, also include law number 7 on social conflict. We are trying to look at how far it has been accommodated in other law so as to avoid overlapping.
Coordination.
Yes.
Yeah.
So at the stage of discussing it that has reached the third year of discussion, almost 40 times of consultation from Jakarta to other places in Indonesia, we are doing the best to make sure that intra-ministerial level and stakeholders from the society has a good coordination in talking which are the priorities agenda that in accordance with the main aspects of SCR 1325. After this, in this month,
Can I ask you to begin to wrap it up, please, because we need to hear from other people.
I just wanted to say that our position is, we agree that that is not the main tool, but we recognize the importance, hence we are still proposing to the NAP under our presidential, what is it in Indonesia? Presidential decree of the women in conflict area. Perhaps there are some disputes on the terminology of security from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but that is going to be discussed also in the next agenda of women, peace and security, which will be held in Jakarta on November 7th. Thank you.
Looking forward to that update. That's really interesting actually to hear about the Indonesian experience. We're going to hear again from Indonesia, but Valentina, did you want to say something? Was there anyone else who wanted to say anything? I might go around the room actually and just ask really quickly about this idea, because I thought it was very useful what Roma said about what do we mean by peace, actually. What do we mean by security? I think you want to press the little button on the left for about a second until it's going to read. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Khan. My personal position is, of course, that I'm against the motion, but I have to say that as a legal specialist and human rights specialist in doing all of my activities, I do believe that UNSCR 1325 is a very, very important tool. But then, when you put it in the national context, then you have also to understand the hierarchy of the regulation, the legal system of the country at the national level. For example, in our tradition, most of the national action plan actually translate into the presidential level regulation. And above that, we still have the law. So, for example, in Indonesian experience, I'm very aware that the National Action Plan is actually one of the terms that already promoted by the UN, since also UN also encouraged to have each state to have also national action plan on human rights. And in Indonesia, we already also have that national action plan on human rights, using the four-year term. But still, it is in the presidential regulation in terms of the national context. So, like my colleague already mentioned earlier, in Indonesia, for example, just a few years ago, we already had the law on the social conflict management, which is being criticized by the civil society, which we know there's still so many challenges in terms of women's participation and so on. And also, yes, because for example, because of the definition of the conflict, conflict is really not in the broader context, for example, and so many other like the decision to the law actually put the security only in the context of military perspective, and I think it happens in most of the country in Asian region. So from all the articles in that, I think 80% or more actually telling about how the president and how the local government can say this is a situation of conflict, and then how they can include the military to do something, and some other issues. So this law actually also being criticized. But how we can also make women to be aware of the importance of criticizing that law, not only the UNSCR, because some of the women's activists also work to promote that Indonesia will have the national action plan on this women's peace and security. But then, how women's voices and experience also being included in the process of advocacy for the law on the social conflict management. And just recently, for example, in Indonesia, the government and the parliament just issued the law on the community organizations, which also being criticized. I think also it has been raised also internationally and regionally, because some of the NGOs also talk about that this law can victimize a community organization who works also in the conflict area. So I think I do agree that UNSCR 1325 it is a must that we have to promote and put that in our national agenda. But then we have also to be aware and criticize in how we put it, because if it is going to be like only in the level of under the law, which is that usually happen, then we.
I understand the obstacles being faced in many countries. Two things I would like to mention. Firstly, the effort of this National Action Plan in every country is to go beyond the existing level of our status of women, to give them a greater participation. So that is the effort, that is the objective. We are not going to accept the negative conditions that are available in that country. But all said and done, a national action plan, I'm sure civil society agrees 100% that national action plan is the final objective. You might continue your efforts to improve the situation, change that laws, but as this document will be available internationally, a national government will find very difficult to defend those negative laws which are working against. As you know, CEDAW reports always help countries to improve their conditions. Secondly, I would say in two countries, I believe, one of them is India, which has started the process, because Indian government holds the same view that, like Pakistan, that we do not have any conflict, so we don't need a national action plan. Civil society in India has started preparing their own national report. They say this will be civil society's NAP. Whether government agrees to not, we will make that public, we'll have that internationally available. And I believe that in countries where there is a serious objection by government to prepare one, civil society should go ahead, prepare their national action plan, and make it internationally available.
That is a very good idea. That's a very interesting idea. And I don't know whether people from civil society here would consider it. Valentina, do you mind if we, can I take, how many people want to speak? Can I take 3 comments, please, very quickly? Introduce yourself, please, and try to speak.
I'll try. I'm Nawaz Mohammed from Search for Common Ground, Sri Lanka. I have 3 points. Let me try to be brief. The first one is about principle versus action. I hear a lot about people pragmatically trying to do things, which is great and I really appreciate. But then I'm wondering, why do we need a Security Council resolution if we are to do in a shuttle way things that we've been doing for decades, right? So what is the principal idea behind this? The whole principal idea is the recognition that there's conflict and the aspect of these 4 pillars of women in the post-conflict and conflict situation, the recognition of this principle. I think that's missing if we just get into this pragmatism aspect of it. So I think we need to pay serious attention to this whole principal idea, but I'm not saying no to the pragmatism. That's my first point. My second point is the conceptual clarity. As Ruma said, I think it's a huge problem, including in the civil society. I've been facilitating a 2-day workshop recently in Sri Lanka with a group of regional women's leaders who have been working on 1325 for more than 5-6 years. I'm continuing after a 2-day workshop they've been earlier, which I was not in. in the second workshop, I was amazed to see that the whole thing they discussed in the previous workshop was not any different to any of the previous gender or CEDAW or anything else. So my only question for the whole 2 days was why and what's the difference in terms of 1325 and where is the conflict dimension in this? So that shaped it quite a lot. And my point is that the conceptual clarity, I think, is a key challenge, even including for us as civil society. My third point is, which would also may change the whole motion here, is whether we can work without a national action plan. In Sri Lanka, we are thinking, we have a representative from the Women's Ministry. We are thinking, because we also have a lot of national action plans on various other aspects, and particularly relating to conflict, we also have a, like a post-conflict related reconciliation report and all of that. Now there's a big debate and discussion and suggestion whether we can include and sensitize all of that from a 1325 point of view rather than coming up with another NAP, which would be again another document without, and maybe it will take another 5 years to get to that. So with all of that, this debate is going on. So that's a question to the panel, whether we can change the motion here.
Okay, you know what, what I'm going to do is we're getting really good responses, so I'd like to keep on going with the audience and then maybe get a conclusion from you guys, including a statement from you guys, picking up whatever points that you found of interest, and then we will put it again to a vote, right? So let's keep going. It is 3:15 now. Should we keep going until 3:25? And then we'll do the vote, and then we'll break the coffee at 3:30 as scheduled. Sri Lanka I find very fascinating because I haven't been there for a while. I was there just before the elections. And to me, what I see is not peace, defeat is what I see. That's not the same as peace. All right.
Thank you very much. My name is Paul Mason. I work for UNDP's support to Afghanistan's peace and reintegration program. And I just have a question or a point for clarification. Talk about national action plan being the only tool for translating UNSCR1325. But we also hear that CSOs are responsible for producing their own NAPs. Is an NAP therefore
not necessarily responsible? I think the point was more that it's an alternative, it's a position, it's something that you can do if the governments are not interested.
Right. So then, therefore, we have what's called the working group on peace and security. So therefore, I think that's part of the important feedback aspect of the national action plan. I think we can discuss more about how that feedback.
Is that everywhere? Is that everywhere or just Afghanistan?
No, it's in general. Like several groups. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hands up. Anyone else want to?
Hello, Jasmine from the Economic Social Debate.
Sorry, again.
Sorry, talking too fast. That would be an Australian habit. Jacqueline from the Economic and Social Commission for the Asian Pacific. In this dialogue on furthering implementation of 1325, in building peace, which is a process of connection, in equitable and inclusive socio-economic development, I don't know if I'm hearing correctly, but there seems to be this dichotomization of state and civil society. And I'm wondering how we don't engage in that separation, that the state is one entity and civil society is another entity, as opposed to being different mechanisms of representation and participation and furthering social change, rather than existing in an oppositional or conflictual sort of process.
Maybe we got some good governments in this region.
So how do we do that? So how do we, if we were supposed to be participation and empowerment, how do we get women in that state where we are working collaboratively and it's not an oppositional process?
I think that is something that might ask Irene to pick up, because in the Philippines we have a lot of government officials now who are coming from civil society, and also Ambassador Chandler. Okay, next. Who else wanted to speak? Oh, Rebecca.
Thank you very much for the Portuguese. And just a short comment that.
Can you tell me what you are, please?
I'm from Myanmar. I'm working right now. I'm working part-time for the Myanmar Peace Center in Yangon. And or against the motion, I think also depends on from which country we are. Like for example, in our country, then unless the state is committed to the NAPs or whatever, then the civil society and other groups will be very difficult to start and talk about this and organize this. So I think it is for the state, the commitment of the states, and followed by the CSO and non-state actors. And I believe that that is no single tool for translating the UNSCR1325 to the women, peace, and security. I think we all need to work together.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. My name is Salman Ramos from Timor-Leste.
And you're with the Department for...
I'm working with the Secretariat for the Promotion of Equality at General Directorate. We know that we have the law, international treaties, resolution, international resolution, national resolution, but I think one important thing for all of this, we need the law enforcement for the implementation. Even though we have many policies and laws, but if there is no enforcement, I'm not sure with the...
Do you mean accountability?
Yes.
Yeah.
And also political will. And second, I want to share with all of you about the National Action Plans. We just adopted our National Action Plan on gender-based violence last year, 2012, and this National Action Plan is chaired, the process is chaired by government, by my office, and actually myself chair this process of National Action Plan on gender-based violence that's covered three main areas: protection, prevention, protection, and legal assistance. In the process, in our country, I can say that it's very good. We not going to consult, to do the consultation with the civil society, but the civil society and the government, we form one working group together to develop the National Action Plan. And then the National Action Plan, when adopted by the Council of Ministers, there is a resolution, create an entity for monitoring, define, and the implementation of the National Action Plan on gender-based violence. And this entity is formed by government representative and 3 representatives from civil society that represent each topic: prevention, protection, and legal assistance. And then together we develop the tools for the monitoring, and every year we write a report to the National Parliament. That is our. And for the 1325, now we are just start to discussion and to identify what is the main area to develop the national.
Yeah, I think my impression with East Timor is going beyond the kind of conflict of the Indonesian occupation. Now there's a very big issue of gender-based violence. Yeah. Okay. 2 more.
My name is Hasmina Kalase. I'm from the Act 1325 in the Philippines. I think some of you should know that I'm a big fan of national action plans. And I'm thinking of the work that we do back home. Our adoption of the national action plan actually has worked and has brought some good results back home. In my mind, I can think of an example of the product of our localization work. For example, in Kalinga, for many years and ever since, no women have sat in the Council of Elders, the Matagoan Council. But because
in the tribal structure.
Yeah, but because we localized the National Action Plan there was some openness, and now there are 4 women sitting in the Council of Elders, first time in history. And so I thought that adoption of NAT's work because of results like this. But then also I was thinking that even before the adoption of the National Action Plan, we have already women actively participating in these processes. But even if there is no NAT, like I think Santiago here, as a member of the peace panel, so track one, in some aspects, women can still actively participate without it. So I'd say then, that national action plans are effective tools, but there are other pathways actually be available, to advance the women, peace, and security agenda. I still am a
Because
very
we have to support her
Yeah.
as well, her work as on the panel, that there is something that kind of codifies.
yeah, that's true. I'm actually, I still an ardent supporter of it. I think states should pursue the development of national action plans, but we should also not close our doors to other options. That's my way of saying that both of them won the debate because both of them made very good
We should
points.
One more. Do we have one more comment? Does anyone want to make a comment? Okay, I think we've reached the end of that audience participation. Let's get some concluding comments, please. Did you want to answer the question? Should we go in the same order as the debate? Yeah. Thank you. If you could leave it to 2 minutes.
Yes, it will be 1 minute. I will give one of my minutes to Masara. Well, firstly, I think the question was raised whether civil society can make the relationship not confrontational. I believe that that is not the way it is. I think what is expected is that in the preparation of the National Action Plan, civil society's experience, civil society's commitment and needs will be reflected in the National Action Plan. And I will recommend, as we are speaking in the Asia Pacific region, I would recommend very strongly that you please look into the national action plans of Liberia, Sierra Leone, Cote d'Ivoire. These are the countries which have engaged civil society in a big way. And those plans of action, those are countries which came out of conflict and I think done wonderfully well. So my recommendation would be, if we are looking for some examples of good national action plan, please look into those. We as a continent, as a regional group, we in the Asia Pacific are the slowest. The African countries have done much way ahead of us. And also remember, the industrialized countries, 50% of the National Action Plan, 18 of them are prepared by the industrialized countries, which are not party to any conflict, but they have a role in conflict resolution because they are the funders. They bring in contributions to promote peace and security. So that is very important. It is not necessarily that no country, I make that assertion very strongly, no country in the world can say conclusively that we have no conflict. If women's rights are subjected to questioning, that is a country in conflict. You are denying 50% of humanity their rights. No country can claim that we are not in conflict. So that is a very important point. I would also like to mention in this context that when you look at our sort of debate title, I believe we should say that substantively, national action plans are the only instrument available. Thank you.
I would just like to conclude by picking up on Sri Lanka's points that I really feel this is 2013, a new resolution has been drafted on the 18th of October. I hope if you haven't had a chance to look at it, I would be happy to share the text, which I have. But it states very clearly, and in the words of the Secretary General himself, the need to bring together the political, the developmental, and the security arms of this debate. And I think there is a need for a paradigm shift. I humbly beseech all of you here, go back to your countries, work with whoever it is, civil society, state, academia, intelligentsia. We need to rethink and move to a paradigm shift, as Ambassador Chaudhary has said, from very state-centric and militarized understandings of security to people-centered security. And I will come full disclosure and tell you that as a graduate student, I used to read day and night the writings of Mahbubul Haq. I don't know if some of you know him, but the whole human development paradigm that the United Nations Development Program stands on. And he talked about bringing people into development, people-centered understandings of development. What is the point if we talk about 100 things and we forget the real wealth of a society, and that is its men and women, its girls and boys? And so I'd like to end by saying, let's not just think negatively, but think positively, that if you really want development, peace and prosperity, you have to take the capabilities, the potential of both women and men, and then probably you will have an abundance there that will take away the cause for conflict. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vivian. Sarah?
I just want to respond to my brother from Sri Lanka. I agree with you because, and I think there have been mixed of opinions here as well when it comes to normal and abnormal situations. 1325 actually addresses the issue in an abnormal conflict crisis situation. For that we have CEDAW. For the normal situation we have CEDAW. So we have to actually differentiate between the two. And secondly, somehow we have to link it with 1325. Secondly, I would like to add that when we have the National Action Plan on 1325, it makes it mandatory on the state to respond to the obligations, its international obligations and commitments. And I have seen that in the case of national action plans that we developed, of course, around CEDAW. And every year, when we are preparing the report, the government is preparing the report on CEDAW, they are so worried. They are so careful in all the words that they put in the report, and they go they try to contact the civil society what they have been doing. So I think it literally, if we develop a national, of course, the NAPS on 1325, it will literally put the states here at a very responsible and accountable position because they are now answerable to a larger community, and that is of course the international community and of course the UN itself. Thirdly, we just had the all-party conference. It was about having a peace dialogue, whether we should have peace dialogue with the Taliban or not. And believe me, it was all political parties represented by all men who have women wings and of course women elected representatives at all the, of course, the four provincial assemblies and at the parliament, at the national parliamentary level. No, not a single woman was there at the APC. If NAP had been there, at least the state would have thought at 2 times before holding APC without a woman. So NAP is basically your commitment in black and white, not only to your own self, to your own community, to your own nation, but to the nation of the world. So NAP is important.
Thank you very much indeed.
Again, let us remind ourselves that the origins of 1325 are rooted in the women's struggle for eradicating gender inequalities in public and private spaces. It would therefore take more than 1 tool to change all that. As much as we appreciate all the work that went into the formulation and the passage of Security Council Resolution 1325 and the declaration of the NAP as a way of making state accountable to women, peace and security issues. It will take massive popular education through various media and spaces to change antagonistic and patriarchal attitudes and behaviors that frontier violence. It will take extraordinary organizing and mobilizing across sectors and locations to ensure that political will is strong. And it will take people to people, people to state, women to men programs to change demonizing mythologies and exclusionist practices that leave women out of the process where they have much to contribute. So popular education, organizing and mobilizing, actions connecting people and state are the other tools to change the course of history. And therefore, that is not the only tool.
Thank you very much indeed, Irene Santiago. I think can I ask for a round of applause for our speakers today? I thought that was an incredibly useful debate. I really enjoyed that and moderating it and listening to all the views that we had from the floor. Can I ask, before we go to the coffee break, for you to take up your determinators? Think again. Forget about what you voted last time. And on the basis of what you've just heard, please, vote again. A, B, or C. Are you ready? You have 30 seconds. Ready? Everybody all right? All right. Quick, push your button. 5 seconds left. 1, 0. Ah, interesting. Very interesting. Congratulations. Lots of the chat room, not that. Thank you. Well done. They changed, and we had fewer C's, which I think is a good thing, probably. You know, I really feel that in this case it shows that we've had some engagement over what we were talking about for the last 90 minutes. Yes, Sarah, possibly. Yes, exactly. All right then, we have. Oh, excuse me. Oh, here we are. Before that, this is the comparison. Before, you may remember, before 62.9 versus 22.9. There you are. How many abstained? I hope nobody abstained. Did you have the same universe? Can you tell on the thing? Did you have the same number of votes? I mean, it kind of doesn't matter whether it's. Yeah, I think everyone. Are you a statistician? All right, we have half an hour. Is that all right? We have half an hour for a break, and then when we come back, just to let you know, we'll be having a panel to discuss. We have a panel of resource people, including another panel of experts to move on to our last topic of the day. So that will be from 4 to 5, I believe, or maybe 5:30. I can't remember. 4 to 5. 4 to 5. Okay. And the topic, sorry about this, is Women in Peace-Building Challenges, Strategies and Entry Points. A thought-provoking panel. Please come back. Thank you.